Staff Sergeant Nathan Parker froze mid-step at his son's bedroom door, the homecoming speech he'd rehearsed for 9 months dying in his throat. What should have been joyful reunion morphed into nightmare as his combat-trained eyes adjusted to the darkness. His 6-year-old wasn't in bed at all. Mrs. Reynolds next door dropped her welcome home casserole, porcelain shattering across the hallway floor as Nathan dropped to his knees. "Oh, dear God," she whispered, hand flying to her mouth. The pristine bedroom with its carefully arranged toys told one story. The small sneaker peeking from beneath the bed frame told another. He still wore the dog tags Ethan used to fall asleep holding. Now, as Nathan bent to look under the bed, they dangled in the silence between them. "Please don't tell her you found me," his son whispered, eyes reflecting terror no American child should know. What war zone had Nathan really come home to? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The suburban Portland neighborhood where Nathan Parker had left his son 14 months ago was all American flags and manicured lawns. The kind of place where neighbors brought casseroles when someone died and decorated each other's homes when babies were born. From the outside, the colonial-style house with its white trim and red door looked exactly like the photo Nathan had kept in his footlocker in Afghanistan. Inside was a different story entirely. Nathan Parker was 34, with the weathered face of someone who had seen too much, too young. 3 tours in Afghanistan had left him with a Purple Heart, a Silver Star, and nightmares that medication couldn't touch. But nothing in combat had prepared him for the war zone he'd found in his son's bedroom. Ethan Parker had just turned 6 last month, a birthday Nathan had missed. Before deployment, Ethan had been a bright, curious kid who loved math puzzles and drawing elaborate spaceships. The child, hiding under the bed with bruised arms and terror in his eyes, was a ghost of that boy. When Nathan finally coaxed him out, Ethan moved like someone navigating a minefield, calculating each step with precision that no child should know. Rebecca Mills Parker stood in the kitchen the next morning in a crisp white blouse and perfectly applied makeup, looking every bit the pediatric nurse she was at Portland Memorial. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a professional bun, not a strand out of place. Her smile never reached her eyes. "He's just been having trouble adjusting," she explained, slicing fruit for breakfast with surgical precision. "Boys need structure when their fathers are away." Tyler, Rebecca's 17-year-old son from her first marriage, slouched at the breakfast table, varsity football jacket hanging on his chair. When Nathan mentioned Ethan's bruises, Tyler snorted and mumbled something about kids being dramatic for attention. The most unsettling presence was Barbara Mills, Rebecca's 72-year-old mother. A retired school principal with silver hair and pearls, she lived in the guest house behind the main property. The neighborhood association had given her the Community Pillar Award 3 years running. She spoke of children with the clinical detachment of someone discussing laboratory specimens. "In my day," she told Nathan over coffee, "we understood that discipline builds character. These modern parenting books are creating a generation of weaklings." As Barbara spoke, Nathan noticed how Rebecca's shoulders tensed, how her knife paused momentarily against the cutting board. He saw Tyler's fingers tighten around his phone. Most tellingly, he watched 6-year-old Ethan's eyes track Barbara's every movement like a soldier monitoring an unpredictable threat. Something was deeply wrong in this perfect American home, something that had transformed in Nathan's absence. As he sipped his coffee and nodded politely at Barbara's monologue about kids these days, Nathan made a silent promise to his son. He hadn't been there to protect Ethan before, but he was home now. And this time, he wouldn't fail. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Nathan found himself standing in the doorway of Ethan's room. The boy lay perfectly straight in his bed, covers pulled tight in a way no 6-year-old naturally sleeps. Nathan's years of military training made him notice the unnatural stillness. Ethan wasn't asleep at all, just pretending. "Hey, buddy," Nathan whispered, sitting gently on the edge of the bed. "Can't sleep?" Ethan's eyes opened immediately, confirming Nathan's suspicion. "I'm being good," he whispered back, his voice barely audible. Nathan's heart constricted. "You don't have to be good for me, kiddo. You just have to be you." The confusion in Ethan's eyes told Nathan everything. The boy sat up cautiously, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to appear. "Are you going back?" Ethan asked, his small fingers plucking nervously at the bedsheet. "Back where, buddy?" "To the war. Grandma Barbara says soldiers always leave because they like fighting more than their families." Nathan swallowed hard, pushing down the surge of anger. "No, Ethan. I'm home now. My deployment is over." For a brief moment something flickered in Ethan's eyes, a tiny spark of the curious, bright child Nathan remembered. Then it vanished, replaced by the now familiar wariness. "Can I—" Nathan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Can I get you anything? Glass of water, maybe?" Ethan shook his head quickly. "I'm not allowed to have water after 7 p.m. It makes me wet the bed." Nathan frowned. Ethan had been fully potty trained for years before he left. "Have you been having accidents, buddy?" Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but none fell. "Sometimes. When I get scared, Tyler says only babies wet the bed. Grandma Barbara says I do it on purpose to make more work for everyone." Nathan sat quietly, letting Ethan's words sink in. His mind flashed to combat zones, to interrogation techniques and psychological warfare. What he was hearing sounded disturbingly similar. "I'm going to check under your bed for monsters," Nathan said, keeping his voice light. Before Ethan could protest, he knelt down and lifted the dust ruffle. What he found wasn't monsters. It was survival supplies. A plastic water bottle, carefully refilled and hidden. Granola bars, still in their wrappers. A flashlight with batteries that had to have been taken from elsewhere in the house. And most damning of all, a small notebook wedged between the bed frame and the wall. Nathan didn't touch it, not yet. He backed away, pretending he hadn't seen anything unusual. "All clear, buddy. No monsters." Ethan's relief was palpable, but Nathan couldn't tell if it was from the all clear or because Nathan hadn't mentioned what he'd found. "Try to get some sleep," Nathan said, pulling the covers up. "I'll see you in the morning." He waited in the hallway until he was sure Ethan had fallen asleep for real. Then he silently returned to the room and retrieved the notebook. In the guest bathroom, with the door locked and the water running to mask any sound, Nathan opened the notebook. Inside were not the drawings he expected from a 6-year-old. Instead, there were tally marks, hundreds of them, grouped in sets of 5. Some were labeled with single words: yelling, hitting, closet. There was a crude calendar, days marked off with desperate precision. And at the top of each page, in the careful handwriting of a child, trying very hard to form his letters correctly, "Days till Daddy." Nathan's hands began to shake. He'd been gone 273 days. There were 273 tally marks under yelling. The next morning, Nathan volunteered to give Ethan his bath. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but didn't object. "I'd like to reconnect with my son," Nathan explained. "Of course," Rebecca smiled. "That's what we all want." In the bathroom, with the door closed, Nathan helped Ethan undress. What he saw made his military training the only thing keeping him from crying out. Bruises in various stages of healing covered Ethan's back and upper arms, places normally hidden by clothing. A particularly large one yellowed across his lower back. "What happened here, buddy?" Nathan asked, keeping his voice neutral as he gently touched the edge of a bruise. Ethan flinched. "I fell down the stairs. I was running when I shouldn't." "And this one?" Nathan indicated another mark. "I didn't put my toys away properly. I was bad." Each explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. Nathan had interrogated enough prisoners to recognize prepared responses. His 6-year-old son had been coached on what to say. During dinner that night, Nathan watched the family dynamics with new awareness. Barbara dominated the conversation, speaking primarily to Rebecca and Tyler, while occasionally glancing at Ethan with thinly veiled contempt. When Ethan accidentally dropped his fork, the entire table went silent. The boy's face drained of color. "I'm sorry," he whispered, eyes downcast. "Children should be seen and not heard," Barbara said pleasantly, but her eyes were cold. "And clumsy children should perhaps eat in the kitchen until they learn better manners." Nathan saw Rebecca's hand tighten around her wine glass. For a moment he thought she might object. Instead, she nodded. "Tyler, take Ethan's plate to the kitchen counter," she instructed. "He can finish there." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Actually," he said, forcing a smile, "I'd like Ethan to stay. I've missed family dinners." A look passed between Barbara and Rebecca, something unspoken but understood. "Of course," Barbara finally said. "Military men are often permissive with discipline." "You haven't had to deal with his daily behavior." That night, after pretending to go to bed early, Nathan set up his military-grade phone to record in Ethan's room, carefully positioning it where it wouldn't be noticed. Then he waited in his own room, headphones connected to the live feed. Around 11 p.m., he heard it, the soft creak of Ethan's bedroom door opening. Through the headphones came Rebecca's voice, oddly formal. "Are you sleeping properly, Ethan?" "Yes, ma'am." Ethan's voice, small and frightened. "Did you tell your father anything today?" "No, ma'am." "What happens to little boys who tell tales?" A pause. "They get sent away from their families. Forever." "That's right. And who would that hurt most?" Another pause. "Daddy. Because he just got home and would be sad if I disappeared." Nathan felt sick. He'd interrogated terrorists who used less psychological sophistication. "Good boy. Now remember, this is our special secret. Your dad was gone because he chose to leave you. If he knew how naughty you are, he might leave again. Is that what you want?" "No, ma'am." The door closed. Nathan waited 10 minutes, then went to Ethan's room. The boy was curled into a tight ball, eyes squeezed shut, but the wetness on his cheeks revealed he was crying silently. The next day, Nathan called Mike Thompson, his former teammate who now worked in local law enforcement. "I need to meet somewhere private. It's about Ethan." They met at a coffee shop 20 miles away. Nathan played the recording. Mike's face darkened. "This is bad, Nate. But it's not enough. You need more." "More? Did you hear what she said to him?" "I did. And it's psychological abuse, no question. But family courts are overwhelmed. Without physical evidence or multiple incidents documented, this could be dismissed as a one-time bad parenting moment." "She's threatening my son, Mike." "I know. And I believe you. But I've seen too many cases get thrown out. You need to document a pattern, get more recordings, photographs of any injuries, and you need to talk to people who might have witnessed something, teachers, doctors, neighbors." "While my son continues to be abused?" Mike leaned forward. "Listen to me. If you go in with insufficient evidence and lose, it could get worse. They'll be more careful, and you'll have tipped your hand. I've seen it happen." Nathan knew Mike was right, but the thought of Ethan enduring even one more day made him physically ill. "What would you do if it were your kid?" he asked. Mike didn't hesitate. "Exactly what I'm telling you. Document everything. Build an airtight case. And in the meantime, be the safe space your son needs." The next day, Nathan volunteered to take Ethan to school. In the car, he tried gentle questions. "Do you like school, buddy?" Ethan nodded cautiously. "Ms. Harrison is nice. What about home?" "Do you like being at home?" Ethan stared out the window. "I try to be good. I know you do. But sometimes, even when people try to be good, others might hurt them. That's never okay." Ethan's hands twisted in his lap. "Are heroes ever scared, Dad?" The question caught Nathan off guard. "All the time, buddy." "Even you?" "Especially me." Ethan seemed to consider this. "I try to be brave like you. I count to 1,000 every night so I won't cry." Nathan's throat tightened. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't not crying. Sometimes it's letting someone see you cry." When they arrived at school, Nathan walked Ethan to his classroom, taking the opportunity to introduce himself to Miss Harrison, a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and a worried smile. "Mr. Parker, I'm so glad to finally meet you. Ethan talks about you all the time. I'd like to chat sometime, if that's possible, about how Ethan's been doing." Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps relief. "Of course, I have planning period at 10 a.m. most days." As Nathan turned to leave, he saw Ethan watching him, those solemn eyes following his every move, as if memorizing him in case he disappeared again. "I'll be back to pick you up, buddy. I promise." The words seemed to surprise Ethan, and Nathan realized with a stab of pain that promises might not mean much to his son anymore. That afternoon, Nathan installed 2 more recording devices, one in the kitchen and one in the living room. Then he began searching the house while everyone was out. In Rebecca's desk, he found documentation for a joint bank account he didn't recognize, with regular withdrawals to Mills Family Trust. In the master bathroom, hidden behind towels, he discovered prescription bottles with Barbara's name, antidepressants and sleeping pills, but also medications Nathan recognized from his military medical training as powerful sedatives. Most disturbing was what he found inside Ethan's closet, a small space that had been modified with a hook-and-eye latch on the outside. The inside walls had scratch marks at the height a small child might make. Nathan was photographing these marks when he heard the garage door open. He quickly replaced everything and left the room. That night, the recordings captured Barbara instructing Tyler to remind Ethan of the rules, while Rebecca and Nathan were out for dinner, a dinner Barbara had insistently arranged, claiming they needed couple time. When they returned home, Ethan was already in bed, allegedly asleep. The next morning, Nathan noticed a new bruise on Ethan's wrist. "What happened here, buddy?" he asked gently. Ethan's eyes darted to the doorway before answering. "I was climbing on the bookshelf when I shouldn't. Tyler caught me before I fell. He saved me." The precision of the lie broke Nathan's heart. Nathan arrived at Oak Ridge Elementary School precisely at 10 a.m., signing in at the front office as a visitor. The administrative assistant, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain, studied his military ID with obvious approval. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant Parker. Ms. Harrison is expecting you in room 112. The elementary school hallways were covered with children's artwork and motivational posters, "Reach for the stars," and "Kindness matters," that now seemed like cruel ironies given what Nathan suspected was happening to his son. Mrs. Harrison closed her classroom door after Nathan entered, a gesture that immediately put him on alert. "I've been hoping to meet you for months," she said without preamble. "Please, sit down." Nathan lowered himself into a child-sized chair at a reading table. I appreciate you making time. I wanted to ask about Ethan's progress. Ms. Harrison's professional smile faltered. Academically, Ethan is exceptional. His math skills are at least 3 grade levels above average, and his reading comprehension is remarkable. But, Nathan prompted, recognizing the hesitation in her voice. She sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. But I'm concerned about his emotional well-being. Since October, I've noticed significant changes in his behavior. He used to be enthusiastic, engaged with other children. Now he's withdrawn, startles easily. She paused. He hides his math worksheets inside his reading book. Why would he do that? At first I thought he was just bored, working ahead, but when I looked closer, I realized he was hiding something else inside the math worksheets. She opened a drawer and removed a folder. These are copies I've kept. I wasn't sure what to do with them. The folder contained drawings, dark, disturbing images that no 6-year-old should create. A small stick figure in a black space labeled "Bad Place." A larger figure with exaggerated angry eyes standing over a small crying figure. A house with a monster inside. Has Ethan explained these? Nathan asked, his voice tight. He says they're just stories, but... She hesitated. Mr. Parker, I've been teaching for 15 years. I know the difference between imagination and something else. Have you reported this? Ms. Harrison's face flushed. 3 times. To the school counselor and to Child Protective Services. The first time they interviewed Mrs. Parker at the school. She explained that Ethan was processing grief over losing his mother and adjusting to a new family. They seemed to accept that. And the other times? The second report resulted in a home visit. Mrs. Parker's mother, Barbara Mills, was there. She's very well respected in the district. She was on the school board for 20 years and still has considerable influence. What happened during the visit? I don't know exactly. But afterward I was called to the principal's office and reminded about the serious consequences of making false reports. Her fingers twisted together. The third time I called, they didn't even open a case. Nathan studied the teacher's face, recognizing the genuine concern there, but also the fear. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're his father. And because yesterday, for the first time in months, Ethan smiled when he talked about you coming home. She leaned forward. He's been counting the days, you know. Every morning he comes in and marks another X on his personal calendar. Nathan thought of the tally marks in Ethan's hidden notebook. Thank you for trying to help him. I wish I'd done more. Her voice cracked slightly. 2 months ago, Ethan came to school with a fever. When I sent him to the nurse, he became hysterical, begging not to call his stepmother. He said if he was sick, he'd have to take the special medicine that makes the whole day disappear. Nathan's blood ran cold, remembering the sedatives he'd found in the bathroom. The nurse called Mrs. Parker anyway. She came immediately, very concerned, very professional. Took him home. He missed 3 days of school. And when he came back, he wouldn't talk about it. Wouldn't talk much at all. She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Mr. Parker, I don't know what's happening in your home, but I know something isn't right. As Nathan left the school, he made a decision. He couldn't wait any longer to gather evidence. He needed to get Ethan somewhere safe while he built his case. His next stop was Dr. Alan Williams, Ethan's pediatrician. The doctor initially stonewalled, citing patient confidentiality, but when Nathan produced his legal guardianship papers, the physician's demeanor changed. I've had concerns, Dr. Williams admitted, closing his office door. Ethan has had an unusual number of minor injuries this past year. Individually, none were alarming. A sprained wrist, bruised ribs from allegedly falling off a swing, a mild concussion, but collectively... Did you report these concerns? The doctor's face tightened. I documented everything in his file. I made one verbal report to CPS after the concussion. Mrs. Parker provided a very detailed explanation about Ethan climbing bookshelves. Her mother, a former educator with an impeccable reputation, corroborated the story. "And that was enough for you?" Nathan couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "No, it wasn't." Dr. Williams' tone sharpened. "I pushed for further investigation. 2 weeks later, I received notice of a potential malpractice suit from the Mills family attorney, claiming I was making reckless accusations that could damage Mrs. Parker's nursing career. Did you back down? I have 3 children in college, Sergeant Parker. I've spent 30 years building my practice. I'm not proud of it, but yes, I became more cautious." He removed his glasses, suddenly looking older. "The system is designed to protect children, but too often it protects itself instead." Nathan's next conversation was with Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly neighbor whose property adjoined theirs. She invited him in for tea, her hands trembling slightly as she poured. "I've been waiting for you to come home," she said. "I hear things at night. The walls between these houses aren't as thick as they used to be." "What kinds of things, Mrs. Jenkins?" "Crying. A child crying but muffled like someone's covering his mouth." Her rheumy eyes met Nathan's. "And that older boy, Tyler, I've seen how he grabs Ethan's arm when they think no one's watching. Why didn't you call someone?" "I did, twice. The first time that mother of Rebecca's, Barbara, came over the next day with a coffee cake, said Ethan was having night terrors about losing his daddy in the war. Made me feel foolish for worrying." She sipped her tea. "The second time the police actually came. Rebecca explained that Ethan was having a tantrum over bedtime. They left in 10 minutes. Mrs. Jenkins set down her teacup. "My Herbert was a Korean War veteran. He always said you could tell a lot about a person by how they act when no one important is watching. The way they treat waiters or animals." She paused. "Or children." By the end of the day, Nathan had spoken to Ethan's school counselor, the father of a former playdate friend, and even the teenage lifeguard at the community pool who had noticed Ethan never changed clothes in the open locker room like the other boys. And the pattern was clear. Multiple people had observed warning signs. Some had even reported them. But Barbara Mills' community standing and Rebecca's professional demeanor had effectively neutralized every concern. Nathan returned home to find Rebecca preparing dinner, her movements precise and efficient. She smiled when he entered, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How was your day?" she asked, chopping vegetables with surgical precision. "Enlightening," Nathan replied. "I visited Ethan's school, met his teacher." The knife paused momentarily. "Oh, I wish you'd told me. I would have come along." It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Rebecca resumed chopping. "Mrs. Harrison is well-intentioned but tends to dramatize. She's relatively new to teaching. 15 years seemed experience to me." Rebecca's smile tightened. "New to our district, I meant." From the doorway came Barbara's voice. "Nathan, I didn't hear you come in." She entered the kitchen, pearl earrings catching the light. "How was your day?" Before Nathan could answer, the front door banged open and Tyler strode in, tossing his football jacket onto a chair. "What's for dinner?" "I'm starving." He nodded briefly at Nathan before grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "Where's Ethan?" Nathan asked, noticing his son's absence. "Upstairs, doing homework," Rebecca replied smoothly. "He had a bit of an episode at school today. The counselor called me." Nathan's pulse quickened. "What kind of episode?" "Oh, just a little meltdown during art class. He wouldn't share the blue crayon with another child. Miss Reynolds thought he might need some quiet time at home." Nathan had spoken to Miss Reynolds, the counselor, just hours ago. She had mentioned no such incident. "I'll go check on him," Nathan said, moving toward the stairs. "Let him be," Barbara interjected. Children need to process their emotions independently. Hovering only reinforces attention-seeking behavior. Nathan ignored her, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Ethan's bedroom door was closed. When Nathan turned the knob, he found it locked from the outside, a new feature since that morning. He unlocked it quickly and pushed the door open. Ethan wasn't at his desk. The room appeared empty until Nathan heard a faint shuffling from the closet. The closet door had a hook-and-eye latch secured on the outside. Nathan's hands shook with rage as he unfastened it. Inside, Ethan sat with his knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide in the darkness. "Hey, buddy," Nathan said softly, kneeling down. "What are you doing in here?" "I was bad at school today," Ethan whispered. "I have to think about my actions." "Who put you in here?" Ethan looked down. "I'm not supposed to tell." Nathan gently lifted his son's chin. "Ethan, did someone lock you in the closet?" Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I have to stay until dinner time. If I'm good and don't make noise, I can eat with everyone. If I'm bad, I have to eat in my room." "How long have you been in here?" "Since Miss Reynolds brought me home." Nathan checked his watch. That had been at least 3 hours ago. "Come on, buddy. You're coming with me." He lifted Ethan into his arms, the boy's body tense against his chest. As they came down the stairs, Rebecca looked up from the dining room where she was setting the table. "Ethan should be doing his reflection time," she said, her voice sweet, but her eyes hard. "He was locked in a closet," Nathan replied, his tone deadly calm. "It's a time-out space," Barbara interjected from the kitchen doorway. "All the parenting books recommend a quiet area for reflection." "Locked from the outside? Children his age don't have impulse control," Barbara explained, as if to a particularly slow student. "The latch ensures he completes his reflection without distraction." Nathan set Ethan down at the table. "Ethan is going to eat dinner with us. Then he and I are going to visit my friend Mike for a few days." Tyler snorted from the couch where he was playing a video game. "Running away already? Mom said you wouldn't last a week." Nathan ignored him, focusing instead on Rebecca, whose face had drained of color. "Nathan, you can't just take him. We have routines, expectations. Consistency is crucial for children." "I'm his father. I'm taking my son for a visit with my old friend. Unless you'd like to explain to a family court judge why that's a problem." The implicit threat hung in the air. Barbara's eyes narrowed, calculating. After a long moment, she nodded almost imperceptibly to Rebecca. "Of course," Rebecca said, her voice suddenly warm again. "A father-son trip sounds wonderful. When will you be back?" "A few days," Nathan said vaguely. "Ethan, go pack your backpack with some clothes and whatever toys you want to bring." As Ethan hurried upstairs, Nathan caught the look that passed between Barbara and Tyler. Something cold settled in his stomach. These people weren't going to let go easily. After dinner, Nathan drove Ethan to Mike Thompson's house in a suburb 30 minutes away. Mike lived alone since his divorce, but kept a tidy home with a spare bedroom that his own kids used during visitation weekends. "You can stay as long as you need," Mike told Nathan quietly as Ethan explored the backyard. "But what's your plan here?" "I'm going back tonight after Ethan's asleep. I need to gather more evidence, recordings, photographs, anything I can find. Then I'm filing for emergency custody." Mike frowned. "Nate, that's breaking and entering if Rebecca doesn't consent." "It's my house, too." "Technically, maybe, but if you're caught, I'm not leaving my son in that situation one day longer than necessary. The system has already failed him repeatedly. I won't." Mike recognized the determined set of his friend's jaw, the same expression Nathan had worn before particularly dangerous missions. "Just be careful," he warned. "These people are obviously manipulative. They've managed to fool a lot of people for a long time." After getting Ethan settled for the night, Nathan returned to his house, parking a block away and approaching through the backwoods that bordered their property. Through the kitchen window, he could see Rebecca and Barbara in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Nathan circled to his workshop in the detached garage where he kept his tools. Using his key, he entered silently and retrieved what he needed, a small digital camera and additional recording devices. As he was about to leave, he noticed Tyler sitting in the shadows of the workshop, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "Looking for something, soldier boy?" Tyler's voice was hard, but Nathan detected a slight tremor beneath the bravado. "Just getting some things I need," Nathan replied evenly. "For your little camping trip?" Tyler snorted. "You think you're rescuing him, don't you? Playing the big hero? I'm his father. It's my job to protect him." Tyler took a long drag of his cigarette, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. "Where were you for the last 9 months then? Off playing war while Grandma Barbara ran the show here?" Something in Tyler's tone made Nathan pause. "What do you mean, ran the show?" Tyler laughed, a bitter sound with no humor. "You have no idea what you walked into, do you? You think it's just about the kid? Enlighten me." Tyler studied him for a moment, then stubbed out his cigarette. "Nah, you wouldn't believe me anyway. Nobody ever does." As he stood to leave, Nathan noticed a faded bruise on Tyler's forearm, partially hidden by his sleeve. "Did she hurt you too?" Nathan asked quietly. Tyler's face hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." For a moment, something vulnerable flickered in Tyler's eyes. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Just take the brat and go. Best thing for everyone." He pushed past Nathan and disappeared into the night. Nathan entered the house through the back door, moving silently through the kitchen. Rebecca and Barbara had moved to the living room, their voices now audible. "He's going to be a problem," Barbara was saying. "I told you, soldiers make unstable partners." "He'll be gone again soon," Rebecca replied, her voice strangely flat. "His unit already called about the next deployment. I just need to keep things under control until then." "And if he files for custody?" "On what grounds? His word against ours? I'm a pediatric nurse with an impeccable record. You're a respected educator." "He's a soldier with PTSD who's been absent for most of his son's life." Barbara made a satisfied sound. "Exactly. No judge would side with him, especially once we express concerns about his mental stability. We just need to be careful for a few weeks." Nathan had heard enough. He slipped upstairs to Ethan's room, quickly retrieving the notebook from under the bed and taking photos of the tally marks. Then he moved to the closet, documenting the scratch marks inside. In the master bedroom, he located Rebecca's personal laptop. Her password, Ethan's birth date, took only 2 attempts to crack. Inside, he found folders of family photos, carefully curated to show a happy, blended family. But in a subfolder labeled Insurance Docs, Nathan discovered something chilling. Medical records for Ethan, documenting injuries that Nathan had known nothing about, along with prescription records for sedatives that no 6-year-old should be taking. Most disturbing was an email exchange with Barbara about behavioral modification plans for Ethan, detailing rewards and punishments in clinical language that masked their cruelty. Nathan downloaded everything to a flash drive, his hands steady despite the rage building inside him. As he was about to close the laptop, a new email notification appeared from Barbara. "Summer house plans." The message was brief. "Realtor confirmed closing date for July 1st. Enrollment paperwork for E at Lakeside Academy completed. Deposit paid. T reluctant but manageable." They were planning to move, to take Ethan away where Nathan might never find him. As Nathan crept back downstairs, he heard Tyler's voice join the conversation in the living room. "He was in the garage, going through his stuff." "Did he see you?" Barbara demanded. "Yeah, we talked." "What did you tell him?" Rebecca's voice was sharp with anxiety. "Nothing." Tyler's tone was sullen. "But he's not stupid." "He's figuring things out." "This complicates matters," Barbara said. "We may need to accelerate our timeline." Nathan had heard enough. He slipped out the way he had come, evidence secured. As he drove back to Mike's house, one thought crystallized in his mind. This was no longer just about documenting abuse. It was a race against time. Dawn broke over Mike Thompson's suburban backyard, casting long shadows across the freshly mowed lawn. Inside, Nathan sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by printouts of emails, photographs, and transcripts of recordings. His eyes were bloodshot from a night without sleep, but his military training had taught him to function through exhaustion. What it hadn't prepared him for was the visceral rage that threatened to overwhelm his carefully constructed discipline. Mike placed a cup of black coffee in front of him. "You look like hell." "I feel worse," Nathan admitted, rubbing his eyes. "But I've got enough now. Medical records showing unexplained injuries, recordings of psychological abuse, evidence they're planning to flee the state with my son." Mike reviewed the documents, his law enforcement experience evident in his methodical approach. "This is compelling, but family court is different from criminal court. Judges are overworked, cases are rushed. You need something indisputable." From the guest bedroom came the sound of Ethan waking up, the careful, quiet movements of a child accustomed to making himself invisible. Nathan's heart contracted. "I don't have time to build the perfect case. They're planning to move in less than a month." Mike sighed. "Let me make some calls. I know a detective in family crimes who owes me a favor." While Mike stepped outside to use his phone, Nathan went to check on Ethan. The boy had already made his bed with military precision, his backpack neatly organized beside it. "Morning, buddy. Sleep okay?" Ethan nodded, his eyes darting around the unfamiliar room. "Is it time to go back now?" The question hit Nathan like a physical blow. "No, buddy. We're staying here a little longer." "But won't I get in trouble for missing school?" "You're not in trouble. I've already called your school and told them you're taking a few personal days with me." Ethan seemed to process this, his small face serious. "Will Grandma Barbara be mad?" "You don't need to worry about that. I'm your dad, and I make the decisions about where you go and what you do." For the first time since Nathan had returned home, Ethan's posture relaxed slightly. The small gesture of trust felt monumental. Over breakfast, Nathan tried to engage Ethan in normal conversation, asking about his favorite subjects in school and books he enjoyed. The boy answered politely but cautiously, as if suspecting a trap. It wasn't until Nathan mentioned possibly visiting a science museum that a genuine spark of interest flickered in Ethan's eyes. "They have real dinosaur bones there," Ethan said, his voice gaining animation, "and a planetarium that shows all the constellations. Would you like to go? Maybe tomorrow?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded, a tiny smile appearing before quickly being suppressed. Later that morning, while Ethan was occupied with some books Mike had provided, Detective Sarah Lowenstein arrived. In her early 40s, with prematurely gray hair and shrewd eyes, she reviewed Nathan's evidence with professional detachment. "You've been thorough," she acknowledged. "But I need to be straight with you. CPS is overwhelmed. They get hundreds of reports weekly and have staffing for maybe half. Cases without immediate physical danger often get deprioritized. So my son has to be severely injured before anyone will help." Nathan struggled to keep his voice level. "I didn't say that. I'm explaining the reality so you understand what we're up against." She tapped the folder containing Ethan's medical records. "This pattern of injuries combined with the recordings gives us something to work with. But we need Ethan's testimony." Nathan shook his head. "He's too scared. They've been threatening him for months, telling him he'll be taken away from me if he speaks up. Unfortunately, without his statement, this becomes your word against theirs, and as you've discovered, they're very good at manipulating perceptions." Mike, who had been listening silently, interjected, "What about the neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, or the teacher?" Adult witnesses help, Lowenstein admitted, but judges want to hear from the child. He's 6 years old, Nathan protested, and he's the one who can confirm or deny what happened in that house. Her expression softened slightly. I understand your reluctance, but if you want custody, Ethan will need to talk to someone eventually. A judge, a court-appointed psychologist, someone. After the detective left, Nathan found himself facing an impossible choice: push his traumatized son to relive his abuse or risk losing him to the very people who had hurt him. That afternoon, Nathan took Ethan to a nearby park, hoping the neutral setting might help the boy feel safer. As Ethan cautiously explored the playground, Nathan noticed how he constantly scanned his surroundings, checking for threats, behavior Nathan recognized from combat veterans. They sat on a bench eating ice cream cones, watching ducks on a small pond. Nathan chose his words carefully. Ethan, you know I was away for a long time, fighting in a war. The boy nodded, licking his ice cream with precise, careful movements to prevent any drips. While I was gone, I worried about you every day. I wanted to make sure you were safe and happy. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on the ducks. Since I've been home, I've noticed some things that worry me, like the closet and the bruises on your arms. Ethan's shoulders tensed, his ice cream forgotten. I want you to know something important, Nathan continued, keeping his voice gentle. Nothing that happened while I was gone was your fault. Nothing. A tear slipped down Ethan's cheek, followed by another. He didn't wipe them away, didn't acknowledge them at all. Some people might have told you that you were bad, or that you deserved to be punished. That's not true. No one has the right to hurt you, no matter what. Ethan's voice, when it finally came, was barely audible. Grandma Barbara says I'm defective, that my real mom made me wrong. Nathan's heart shattered. He fought to keep his voice steady. Your mom loved you more than anything in the world, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. But I do bad things. I wet the bed sometimes, and I cry too much. Those aren't bad things, buddy. They're just things that happen, especially when someone is scared or sad. Ethan's ice cream cone tilted, dripping onto his hand. He stared at it in horror, his breathing accelerating. It's okay, Nathan said quickly. It's just ice cream. It washes off. But Ethan was already frantically wiping his hand on his pants, his face pale. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make a mess. I'll clean it up. Please don't tell. Nathan gently took the cone, set it aside, and pulled Ethan into his arms. The boy went rigid at first, then gradually melted against his father's chest, his small body shaking with silent sobs. I've got you, Nathan whispered. I've got you now. Later that evening, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Nathan's phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. Nathan, when are you bringing Ethan home? It's been 2 days. He has school tomorrow. Her voice was perfectly calibrated, concerned but not controlling, a mother reasonably inquiring about her stepson's whereabouts. He's fine. We're spending some quality time together. Of course, and that's wonderful, but he needs his routine, his things, his bed. The closet with the lock on the outside, you mean? A brief silence. I don't know what you think you saw, Nathan, but that latch is for his safety. Ethan sleepwalks sometimes. We were worried he might wander out of the house at night. The plausible explanation, delivered with just the right note of concern, made Nathan understand how easily others had been deceived. We'll be back when we're back, Rebecca. Nathan, her voice hardened slightly, I understand you want to reconnect with Ethan. But this isn't how co-parenting works. Barbara and I have established boundaries and expectations that have been helping Ethan thrive. Your disruption of his routine is going to set back months of progress. Progress toward what exactly? Being too terrified to speak? Hiding food under his bed? expecting to be locked in closets when he makes mistakes? Another pause. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice had a different quality, colder, more calculated. I see. Well, if you're determined to make accusations, perhaps we should involve the proper authorities. I wonder what they'll make of a combat veteran with PTSD suddenly removing a child from his home and refusing to return him. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of how things might appear to outsiders who don't know the whole situation. Your commanding officer has already called twice, concerned about your mental state since returning home. The implication was clear. She had already begun building a narrative against him. Bring him home tomorrow, Nathan, or I'll be forced to report him as missing. The line went dead. Mike found Nathan sitting on the back porch, staring into the darkness. Rebecca called, Nathan explained. Threatened to report Ethan missing if I don't bring him back tomorrow. Mike sat beside him. Can she do that? Legally? I don't know, but she's laying groundwork to paint me as unstable. Said my CO has been calling her, concerned about my mental state. Has he? Maybe. I haven't exactly been checking in regularly. Mike was quiet for a moment. I spoke with Lowenstein again. She thinks our best shot is getting an emergency protection order, but we need Ethan to talk to a court-appointed psychologist. He's just starting to trust me again, if I push him too hard too fast. I know. But Nathan, the system doesn't move on its own. Someone has to push it. The next morning, Nathan received another call, this time from his commanding officer, Major Wilson. Parker? What the hell is going on? I've had your wife calling saying you've taken your son and disappeared. Stepmom, sir. And I haven't disappeared. Ethan and I are staying with a friend while I sort some things out. Sort what things out? Parker, you're due back for evaluation in 3 weeks. This is not the time to be creating domestic incidents. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. With all due respect, sir, I'm dealing with a situation involving my son's safety. Your wife, stepmom, says you've been erratic, paranoid, making accusations. Parker, we've seen this before with returning personnel. The transition to civilian life can be disorienting. The unit psychologist has an opening this afternoon. I strongly suggest you take it. Nathan closed his eyes, recognizing the trap closing around him. If he refused psychological evaluation, it would reinforce Rebecca's narrative of his instability. If he agreed, he'd have to leave Ethan, something he'd promised not to do. I'll consider it, sir. That wasn't a suggestion, Sergeant. That was an order. After ending the call, Nathan found Ethan in the guest room, carefully organizing his few belongings. Are we going back now? The boy asked, his voice carefully neutral. Nathan knelt to his level. Ethan, I need to ask you something important. Do you feel safe at home? With Rebecca and Grandma Barbara? Ethan's eyes darted away. I try to be good. That's not what I asked, buddy. The boy's shoulders hunched inward. No, he whispered, but it's my fault. I make them mad. Nothing you could do would make the things they've done okay. Nothing. Ethan looked at him then, really looked at him, his eyes searching Nathan's face. If I tell, will they send me away? No. I promise you, no matter what happens, we'll stay together. But what if they don't believe me? Grandma Barbara says no one ever believes children. The calculated cruelty of that manipulation made Nathan's blood boil. I believe you, and there are other people who will believe you too. People whose job it is to listen to kids and help them. Ethan seemed to consider this. Like Ms. Harrison? Yes, like your teacher. And there are special doctors who talk to kids about hard things. Would you be willing to talk to someone like that? To tell them about what happens at home? Ethan's hands twisted in his lap. Will you be there? I'll be nearby the whole time. After a long moment, Ethan nodded, a tiny, brave gesture that nearly broke Nathan's heart. That's my brave boy, Nathan said softly. Later that day, Nathan received a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Park, 3 p.m. Come alone. T. Tyler. Nathan hesitated, wondering if it was a trap, but something in their brief interaction in the garage had suggested the teenager wasn't entirely aligned with Barbara and Rebecca. After arranging for Mike to stay with Ethan, Nathan drove to the designated meeting spot, a secluded area near the river where teenagers often gathered on weekends. Tyler was already there, slouched on a bench, hoodie pulled up despite the warm weather. "Didn't think you'd come," he said as Nathan approached. "What's this about, Tyler?" The teen glanced around nervously before pulling something from his pocket, a small digital voice recorder. "You should hear this." Nathan took the device cautiously and pressed play. Barbara's voice emerged, cold and precise. "He's becoming a liability. We need to accelerate the timeline." Rebecca's voice replied, sounding strained. "The custody paperwork isn't ready yet. And the house in Michigan—" "Forget the Michigan house. We'll use the cabin in Vermont first, just until things settle down. The school there doesn't ask many questions." "What about Nathan?" "Your concern for your husband is touching." Barbara's voice dripped with sarcasm. "But unnecessary. The groundwork has been laid. Major Wilson already believes he's unstable. One more incident should be sufficient." "And Tyler?" "Tyler will do as he's told if he wants to keep his college fund." The recording ended. Nathan looked at Tyler, whose face was hard but eyes vulnerable. "Why are you giving me this?" Tyler kicked at the ground. "I'm not doing it for you, or even for the kid, really." "Then why?" "Because I'm done being her puppet. Been saving up my own money. Got accepted to a community college in Arizona. Soon as I graduate next month, I'm gone." "Tyler, if you testified—" "No," he cut Nathan off. "I'm not getting involved. I gave you the recording. That's it. I'm out." "She's been hurting Ethan. You've seen it." Tyler's face darkened. "Yeah, I've seen it. Seen a lot of things over the years." "Then help me stop it." "Nobody stopped it for me," Tyler said, his voice flat. "Nobody even noticed." As he turned to leave, Nathan called after him. "Tyler, the recording mentions one more incident. Do you know what they're planning?" The teen paused, not turning around. "No, but whatever it is, it's happening soon." Grandma doesn't like losing control. After Tyler left, Nathan immediately called Detective Lowenstein, forwarding her the recording. She agreed to meet him at the police station. "This changes things," she said after listening. "We now have evidence of conspiracy to flee jurisdiction with a minor and potentially to fabricate evidence against you. I can request an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning." "What about Ethan? Will he need to testify?" "Not at this stage, but eventually, yes, he'll need to speak with a court-appointed psychologist." As Nathan left the station, his phone rang again, Mike's number. "Nathan, you need to get back here now. Rebecca just showed up with the police, claiming you've kidnapped Ethan." Nathan's tires screeched as he pulled into Mike's driveway. 2 police cruisers were parked on the street, lights flashing silently. Neighbors stood on their porches, watching the drama unfold with undisguised curiosity. Nathan's combat training kicked in. Assess the situation, identify threats, protect the vulnerable. Rebecca stood on the front lawn, her nurse's scrubs lending her an air of professional authority. Her face was tear-streaked, a performance so convincing that Nathan might have believed it himself if he hadn't heard the recordings. "That's him," she called as Nathan exited his car. "That's my husband who took my stepson without permission." 2 uniformed officers turned toward him, hands instinctively moving toward their weapons. One of them, a young officer with a crew cut, stepped forward. "Sir, we need you to stay where you are." Nathan raised his hands slightly, making himself non-threatening. "I'm Staff Sergeant Nathan Parker. This is my son we're discussing." "Sir, We have a report of a possible parental kidnapping. That's not possible. I'm his legal father and guardian. The second officer, older with graying hair at his temples, consulted a clipboard. Mrs. Parker says, you've been exhibiting erratic behavior since returning from deployment, that you removed the child from school without proper notification and have refused to return him. Before Nathan could respond, Mike emerged from the house, his police badge displayed prominently on his belt, even though he was off duty. Officers, I can vouch for Sergeant Parker. The boy is safe and has been in his father's care the entire time. The older officer frowned. Thompson, what's your involvement here? I'm a friend of the family. Nathan and Ethan have been staying with me while Nathan sorts out some concerns about his son's welfare. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice trembling with carefully calibrated emotion. There are no welfare concerns. Nathan has been having episodes since returning from Afghanistan. His commanding officer has been worried about his mental state. I've been trying to be supportive, but when he took Ethan without telling me where they were going... She broke off, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The performance was masterful. Nathan realized that even with the recordings, even with the evidence he'd gathered, Rebecca's ability to project victimhood made her a formidable opponent. Where is Ethan now? The younger officer asked. Inside, Mike answered. He's watching cartoons. We need to see him. Mike nodded. Of course. But I should warn you, the boy is frightened. He's been through a lot. As they approached the house, Detective Lowenstein's sedan pulled up. She exited quickly, flashing her badge. Officers, I'm Detective Sarah Lowenstein, Family Crimes Division. I need to speak with you before you proceed. The older officer looked annoyed at the interruption. We're responding to a parental custody dispute, Detective. Standard procedure. This situation is more complex than you've been told. I have evidence suggesting the child may be in danger if returned to Mrs. Parker's custody. Rebecca's face hardened momentarily before she recovered, fear replacing calculation. What? That's absurd. Nathan, what have you been saying? Lowenstein ignored her, addressing the officers directly. I've opened an investigation based on multiple reports of possible child abuse. I have recordings, medical documentation, and witness statements suggesting a pattern of physical and psychological abuse of Ethan Parker by his stepmother and step-grandmother. The older officer looked between Rebecca and Nathan, clearly reassessing the situation. Detective, can we speak privately? While they conferred on the sidewalk, Nathan approached Rebecca, keeping his voice low. It's over, Rebecca. Tyler gave me the recording of your conversation with Barbara. I know about your plans to take Ethan to Vermont. Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Surprise, then fury, quickly masked. I don't know what you're talking about. Tyler has always been troubled, always making up stories. The recording is already with the police, and I have copies of all the emails between you and Barbara about your behavior modification techniques. Rebecca's composure slipped further. You went through my private emails? That's illegal. So is child abuse. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Nathan. Barbara has connections you can't imagine. Judges, school administrators, doctors, they all listen to her. You're just a soldier with PTSD. Who do you think they'll believe? Let's find out. Inside the house, Ethan sat rigidly on the couch, his small body tense as a bowstring. When he saw Nathan, relief flooded his face, followed immediately by fear as Rebecca entered behind him. Hey, buddy, Nathan said gently, sitting beside him. How are you doing? Ethan's eyes darted to Rebecca, then back to Nathan. Fine, he whispered. Detective Lowenstein entered with the two officers. She crouched down to Ethan's level. Hi there, my name is Sarah. I'm a police officer who helps kids. Can I talk to you for a little bit? Ethan looked at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. It's okay, buddy. You can talk to Detective Sarah. Alone, Lowenstein clarified gently. Just you and me. Rebecca stepped forward. I don't think that's appropriate. Ethan gets anxious with strangers. I should be present as his caregiver." "That won't be necessary, Mrs. Parker," Lowenstein replied firmly. "This is standard procedure in cases involving allegations of abuse." "Allegations? This is ridiculous. Nathan is manipulating the situation because he can't accept that his son has bonded with me during his absence." The older officer intervened. "Ma'am, please step outside with Officer Daniels while the detective speaks with the boy." As Rebecca was escorted out, her face a mask of indignation, Nathan felt a small hand slip into his. Ethan looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. "You promised you wouldn't leave," the boy whispered. Nathan knelt down. "I know, buddy, and I won't go far. I'll be right outside the door. Detective Sarah needs to ask you some questions, but you don't have to be scared. Just tell her the truth." "About everything?" "About everything." Ethan's small shoulders straightened almost imperceptibly. "Even the closet?" "And the special medicine?" "Especially those things." As Nathan stepped outside to give them privacy, he heard Lowenstein's gentle voice beginning the interview. "Ethan, can you tell me about what happens when you make mistakes at home?" Through the window, Nathan could see Rebecca pacing on the front lawn, her phone pressed to her ear. She was undoubtedly calling Barbara, reporting this unexpected development. The trap they had planned for Nathan was falling apart, and Barbara Mills was not someone who accepted defeat gracefully. Mike joined Nathan on the porch. "Lowenstein's good with kids. If there's a story to tell, she'll get it." "There's a story," Nathan said grimly. "More like a horror novel." 20 minutes later, Lowenstein emerged from the house, her professional demeanor intact but her eyes troubled. She motioned for Nathan to join her at her car, out of earshot of the others. "He confirmed the closet punishments," she said without preamble. "And the withholding of food. Also mentioned being given special medicine that made him sleep for long periods. Most concerning, he described being told repeatedly that you had abandoned him and wouldn't want him if you knew how bad he was." Nathan's fists clenched involuntarily. "That's psychological torture." "It is. And it's actionable. I'm filing for an emergency protection order right now. Ethan will remain in your custody, and neither Rebecca nor Barbara Mills will be permitted contact pending a full investigation." "What about the responding officers? They came here expecting to return Ethan to Rebecca." "They've been updated on the situation. They'll escort Mrs. Parker off the premises and ensure she understands the conditions of the protection order." Lowenstein's expression softened slightly. "Your son is very brave, Sergeant Parker, and very loyal to you. Even after months of being told you didn't want him, he never stopped believing you'd come back for him." As Lowenstein spoke with the officers, Nathan returned inside to check on Ethan. The boy sat exactly where they'd left him, his posture still rigid, hands folded in his lap. "Hey, buddy," Nathan said softly. "You did great." Ethan looked up, his eyes searching Nathan's face. "Is it over now? Can we stay here?" "Not quite over, but getting there, and yes, you're staying with me." "What about—" Ethan couldn't bring himself to say Rebecca's name. "She's going to leave now. She won't be allowed to see you for a while." Relief washed over Ethan's face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. Then suddenly his expression crumpled, and tears began to stream down his cheeks. Not the silent, hidden tears Nathan had seen before, but open, wrenching sobs that shook his small frame. Nathan gathered him into his arms, feeling the boy's body heave with emotions too large for his 6-year-old shoulders. He didn't try to quiet him or tell him everything was okay. He simply held his son, letting him release months of fear and pain. Outside, they could hear Rebecca's voice rising in protest as the officers explained the protection order. "This is absurd. I've done nothing wrong. That boy needs structure, discipline." Then Barbara's voice joined the fray. she must have arrived during Ethan's interview. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I've been on the school board for 20 years. I know every judge in this county." At the sound of Barbara's voice, Ethan stiffened in Nathan's arms, his crying abruptly silenced. His eyes went wide with terror. "She's here," he whispered. "She can't come in," Nathan assured him. "The police won't let her." But Barbara's voice grew closer, more insistent. "I demand to see my grandson. This is a family matter that's being blown completely out of proportion." The front door opened and Mike stepped in quickly, closing it behind him. "Nathan, we have a situation. The grandmother is demanding to see Ethan. Says she has legal standing as his step-grandmother. She's got some lawyer on the phone making threats about emergency custody petitions." Nathan stood, positioning himself between Ethan and the door. "She's not seeing him. Period." Lowenstein agrees. But this woman, she's something else. Keeps dropping names of judges and officials like she's reading from a social register. Through the window, Nathan could see Barbara, immaculate in a teal pantsuit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, pearl earrings catching the afternoon light. She looked like everyone's ideal grandmother, the kind who baked cookies and read bedtime stories, the perfect disguise for a monster. "Tell Lowenstein I'm recording this," Nathan said, activating his phone's camera. "I want documentation of every threat she makes." As Mike stepped back outside, Barbara's voice carried clearly through the open windows. "This is absurd. My daughter is a pediatric nurse. She's devoted her life to caring for children. These accusations are clearly the product of a disturbed mind. Sergeant Parker has PTSD. It's documented in his military records. He's paranoid, seeing threats where none exist." Rebecca stood beside her mother, her earlier tears now dried. Her expression hardened into righteous indignation. The transformation was remarkable and terrifying in its completeness. Lowenstein's voice cut through the tirade. "Mrs. Mills, I have recordings of you discussing plans to flee the state with Ethan to avoid custody proceedings. I have medical records documenting suspicious injuries, and I have Ethan's own testimony about being locked in closets and drugged as punishment." "Children exaggerate," Barbara dismissed. "Especially troubled children seeking attention." "Ethan Parker is not a troubled child," Lowenstein replied coldly. "He's a victim, and this protection order is non-negotiable." As the confrontation continued outside, Nathan felt a tug on his shirt. Ethan was looking up at him, his face tear-stained but determined. "Dad," he said, the words still new and tentative on his lips. "I want to tell them." "Tell them what, buddy?" "About the monster game and the pictures Grandma Barbara made me look at when I was bad." A chill ran down Nathan's spine. "What pictures, Ethan?" The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "The hurt pictures. With kids. She said if I told anyone, they'd think I was the one who wanted to see them." Nathan felt the blood drain from his face. If Barbara had been showing Ethan child exploitation material as part of her psychological abuse. "Detective Lowenstein needs to hear this," he said, his voice tightly controlled. When Lowenstein entered the house to listen to Ethan's new disclosure, her professional composure faltered momentarily. She recovered quickly, asking gentle but specific questions that confirmed Nathan's worst fears. "Ethan, you're being so brave," she said when he finished. "Thank you for telling me about this. It's never, ever your fault when adults show children pictures like that." She stepped outside with Nathan while Mike sat with Ethan. "This changes everything," she said, her voice hard. "I'm calling for additional units and a forensic team. We'll need to search the Mills residence immediately for evidence of child pornography." "What about Ethan?" "He's safe with you. I've already updated the protection order to include a no-contact provision for Barbara Mills. And now we'll be adding criminal charges." As they spoke, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. A tall man in an expensive suit emerged, carrying a leather briefcase. "Gerald Crawford," Lowenstein muttered. A high-powered attorney to the country club set. Barbara wasn't bluffing about her connections. Crawford approached Barbara and Rebecca, conferring briefly before striding toward Lowenstein with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. "Detective, I'm representing Mrs. Mills and Mrs. Parker in this matter. I understand you've issued some sort of emergency order based on unsubstantiated allegations." Lowenstein didn't flinch. "The allegations are substantiated, Counselor, and I've just received new information that expands the scope of our investigation significantly. Your clients are now persons of interest in a child exploitation case." Crawford's practiced smile faltered. "That's preposterous. Nevertheless, we're executing a search warrant for the Mills residence within the hour. I suggest you advise your clients of their rights." As the attorney retreated to confer with Barbara and Rebecca, Nathan saw the first crack in Barbara's facade, a fleeting expression of genuine fear quickly masked by indignation. Rebecca, however, seemed to crumble. She sank onto a nearby bench, her face ashen. Whatever she had participated in or allowed, this new revelation appeared to genuinely shock her. Within minutes, additional police units arrived. Barbara was read her rights and placed in the back of a cruiser, her protest now reduced to tight-lipped silence. Rebecca remained on the bench, seemingly in shock. As the scene unfolded, Tyler's battered pickup truck screeched to a halt across the street. He jumped out, taking in the police cars and his grandmother in custody with visible confusion. "What the hell?" he demanded, approaching the perimeter that officers had established. Rebecca looked up at her son's voice, her expression desperate. "Tyler, tell them this is all a mistake! Tell them Nathan is lying!" Tyler stood frozen, his gaze moving from his mother to Barbara in the police car, then to Nathan on the porch. "Is this about the recording?" he asked Nathan. "Partly, but Ethan just disclosed something else. Something about pictures your grandmother showed him." Understanding dawned on Tyler's face, followed by a complex mix of emotions: horror, disgust, and finally, a grim vindication. "The special lessons," he said, his voice hollow. "She did it to me too, years ago." Rebecca's face contorted in shocked disbelief. "What? No, that's not possible. Mother would never—" "She did," Tyler cut her off. "And you never noticed, or never wanted to notice?" The revelation hung in the air, reshaping the understanding of everyone present. This wasn't simply about Barbara's abuse of Ethan. It was a pattern spanning generations, with Tyler as an earlier victim who had eventually been groomed to participate in the abuse of others. Detective Lowenstein approached Tyler carefully. "We're going to need your statement." Tyler's shoulders slumped, the bravado that had defined him completely absent. Yeah, I guess it's time." As the officers prepared to transport Barbara to the station, she finally locked eyes with Nathan from the back of the cruiser. There was no remorse in her gaze, only cold fury at having been outmaneuvered. Nathan turned away from her, back to the house where his son waited. The confrontation that had begun with his discovery of Ethan hiding under the bed had exploded into something far larger and more horrific than he could have imagined. But for the first time since coming home, he felt certain of one thing: Ethan was safe now. Inside, he found the boy sitting with Mike, drawing on a notepad. The picture showed two stick figures, one tall, one small, standing beside what appeared to be a house. "Is that us?" Nathan asked, sitting beside him. Ethan nodded. "At our house, but no monsters inside anymore." Nathan put his arm around his son's thin shoulders, feeling the boy lean into him without the fear or hesitation that had marked every previous contact. "No monsters," Nathan agreed. "Not anymore." Outside, the police activity continued as additional units arrived to coordinate the search of the Mills residence. Rebecca was now sitting in the back of a different police car, not under arrest, but being questioned further. Tyler stood with Detective Lowenstein, his expression grim as he gave his statement. The neighbors watched from their porches and windows, their initial curiosity transformed into shocked whispers as word spread about what had been happening behind the perfect facade of Barbara Mills's family. Nathan knew this was just the beginning. There would be court hearings, testimony, probably a messy custody battle despite the evidence. Barbara's connections and influence would not disappear overnight, but the most important battle had been won. Ethan was safe, and the truth was finally coming to light. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was small but steady. "Yes, buddy? Are we going home now?" Nathan considered the house he had returned to just days ago, the house where his son had been abused and terrorized in his absence. "Not to that house. We're going to find a new home. Just you and me? Just you and me." For the first time since Nathan had returned, Ethan smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his solemn little face. It was small and tentative, like the first crocus breaking through snow at winter's end, but it was undeniably real. And in that moment, as police radios crackled and the legal machinery lurched into motion around them, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced since before his deployment. Hope. The courthouse loomed against the clear blue sky, its stone facade imposing and cold. Nathan adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to his wedding with Rebecca just 14 months earlier. Beside him, Mike Thompson stood in silent support, both men watching the reporters gathered on the courthouse steps, like vultures sensing death. "They're going to make a circus of this," Mike warned, nodding toward the news vans. Barbara Mill's arrest made national headlines. Former school board president, Community Pillar Award winner, charged with child endangerment and possession of exploitation materials. It's the kind of story people can't look away from. Nathan nodded grimly. "I know. I just want to keep Ethan out of it as much as possible." The past 3 weeks had been a blur of police interviews, emergency court hearings, and the painful process of helping Ethan begin to heal. They'd moved into a small apartment across town, leaving behind the house that had become a crime scene. Nathan had taken emergency family leave from his unit, his commanding officer suddenly supportive after the full situation came to light. Ethan was staying with Mike's sister during the hearing, a kind kindergarten teacher who had created a safe space for the boy away from the courthouse drama. Nathan missed him viscerally, even for these few hours, the need to check on his son's safety an ever-present ache. "You ready for this?" Mike asked as they approached the steps. "No," Nathan admitted. "But I don't have a choice." Inside, the courtroom was already packed. Barbara's arrest had rocked the community, dividing it between those who couldn't reconcile the charges with the respected educator they thought they knew, and those who had always sensed something wrong beneath her perfect exterior. Rebecca sat at the defendant's table, her posture rigid, her once immaculate appearance now showing signs of strain. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, her face pale without makeup. When she caught sight of Nathan, her eyes flicked away quickly, unable to hold his gaze. Barbara was not present. Her case was proceeding separately, the charges against her far more serious. She'd been denied bail after prosecutors argued she was a flight risk, citing the recorded conversation about fleeing to Vermont. Nathan took his seat beside his attorney, Elizabeth Chen, a family court specialist with a reputation for ruthless effectiveness in child protection cases. She leaned over, her voice low. "Rebecca's lawyer is pushing for supervised visitation. They're positioning her as another victim, claiming she was under her mother's psychological control and didn't fully understand what was happening to Ethan." Nathan's jaw tightened. "She locked my son in a closet. She drugged him." "I know. And we have the evidence. But be prepared. They're going to attack your fitness as a parent, too. Military service, PTSD, long absences. Before Nathan could respond, the bailiff called for all to rise as Judge Harriet Colton entered the courtroom. In her 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and penetrating eyes, she had a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. "Please be seated," she instructed, surveying the courtroom with obvious disapproval at the packed gallery. "I'll remind everyone that this is a family court proceeding, not entertainment. Any disruptions will result in immediate removal." She studied the documents before her, then looked up at the attorneys. Given the connected criminal case against Barbara Mills, this custody matter has taken on additional complexity. I understand we have testimony today from several witnesses, including Tyler Mills. "Is that correct?" Rebecca's attorney, a smooth-voiced man in his 50s named James Whitfield, stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes it noted that she objects to her son being compelled to testify against her. Tyler Mills is a troubled young man with a history of disciplinary issues and fabrication." "Objection noted," Judge Colton replied dryly. "However, Mr. Mills is 18 years old and has chosen to testify voluntarily. His statement has been deemed relevant by this court." Nathan glanced around the courtroom, but Tyler wasn't visible. According to Detective Lowenstein, the teenager had been staying with a friend since giving his statement to police, refusing to return home to Rebecca. The proceedings began with opening statements. Whitfield painted Rebecca as a dedicated nurse and loving stepmother who had been manipulated by her domineering mother, unaware of the extent of Barbara's abuse of Ethan. Mrs. Parker was herself a victim of Barbara Mills' psychological control, Whitfield argued smoothly. She is now in therapy, recognizing the toxic patterns she was unable to see while in her mother's sphere of influence. She loves Ethan and is committed to rebuilding a healthy relationship with him through supervised visitation and family counseling. When Elizabeth Chen rose to speak, her approach was clinical and devastating. The evidence will show that Rebecca Parker was not an unwitting bystander, but an active participant in the systematic abuse of a 6-year-old child. She administered unprescribed sedatives, physically confined him in locked spaces, and psychologically terrorized him with threats of abandonment. These were not the actions of someone under coercion, but of a willing participant in calculated cruelty. As witnesses began to testify, Nathan forced himself to remain outwardly calm while his insides churned with rage and grief. Mrs. Harrison, Ethan's teacher, described the changes she'd observed in the once bright, engaged child. Dr. Williams detailed the suspicious pattern of injuries he'd documented. Mrs. Jenkins recounted the sounds of crying she'd heard through the walls. When Detective Lowenstein took the stand, she played selections from Nathan's recordings, Rebecca's voice cold and threatening as she told Ethan that his father would abandon him if he knew how bad the boy was. The courtroom fell silent at the sound of Ethan's small, frightened responses. Rebecca stared at the table throughout the playback, her shoulders hunched, her attorney occasionally placing a restraining hand on her arm when she seemed about to speak. The most devastating testimony came from Dr. Eleanor Freeman, the child psychologist who had been working with Ethan. "In my professional assessment, Dr. Freeman stated firmly, Ethan Parker has suffered significant trauma as a result of ongoing psychological and physical abuse. He exhibits classic symptoms of childhood PTSD, including hypervigilance, sleep disturbances, and fear responses to specific triggers such as closed doors and raised voices." "And in your opinion," Elizabeth Chen asked, "would continued contact with Rebecca Parker be in Ethan's best interest?" Dr. Freeman didn't hesitate. "Absolutely not. Ethan associates Mrs. Parker with punishment, fear, and abandonment. Forced contact at this stage would significantly impede his recovery and potentially cause additional trauma." When it was Whitfield's turn to cross-examine, he attempted to suggest that Ethan's trauma could be attributed to his mother's death and father's deployment, rather than any actions by Rebecca. Dr. Freeman shut him down with clinical precision. While those events certainly affected Ethan, the specific nature of his trauma responses, particularly his fear of enclosed spaces and his hoarding of food, are consistent with the specific abuses described in the case records, not with grief or separation anxiety. By mid-afternoon, the courtroom was tense with emotion. Several spectators had been quietly escorted out after audible reactions to particularly disturbing testimony. Nathan's hands ached from being clenched for so long. Then the bailiff called the next witness, Tyler Mills. The courtroom doors opened, and Tyler entered, almost unrecognizable from the sullen teenager Nathan had first met. Gone was the swagger, the sports jacket, the defiant posture. He wore a simple button-down shirt and khakis, his shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. He didn't look at Rebecca as he took the stand. "Mr. Mills," Judge Colton said gently, "I understand this is difficult." "Please take your time." Tyler nodded, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above the gallery. "Thank you, Your Honor." Elizabeth Chen approached him carefully. "Tyler, can you describe your relationship with your grandmother, Barbara Mills?" Tyler's hands gripped the rail of the witness stand. "She raised me after my dad left. My mom, Rebecca, she worked a lot. Grandma was in charge of discipline." "And what did that discipline entail?" "When I was little, like Ethan's age, it was mostly the closet. If I talked back or got bad grades, she'd lock me in there, sometimes for hours." His voice remained flat, as if reciting facts about someone else's life. "As I got older, it changed. She'd make me watch while she punished other kids, cousins who visited. Later, Ethan." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Rebecca made a small, wounded sound. "Did you ever try to stop her?" Chen asked. Tyler's face contorted briefly. "Once. When I was 14, she was hitting my cousin with a wooden spoon for spilling juice. I tried to grab it from her. She broke my wrist." "And what was the explanation given for that injury?" "Skateboarding accident. That's what we told the hospital. That's what we always told doctors." "Did your mother, Rebecca Mills Parker, know about these punishments?" For the first time, Tyler looked at his mother. "She knew. Sometimes she was the one who put me in the closet when I was little. But usually, she just wasn't there." Rebecca began to cry silently, her shoulders shaking. "When Ethan came to live with you," Chen continued, "what did you observe?" Tyler's voice grew even more detached. "Grandma saw him as a new project. She has these theories about breaking children's spirits to make them obedient. She started with little things, making him eat alone if he spilled anything, taking away toys for minor infractions. Then it escalated to the closet punishments. The sleep medicine. And your role in this?" Shame crept into Tyler's voice for the first time. "She made me the enforcer, said it would teach me responsibility. I was supposed to report to her if Ethan broke rules, and sometimes I was supposed to scare him. The monster game. Can you explain what that was?" "I'd tell him there was a monster under his bed or in his closet that would get him if he didn't obey. Sometimes I'd hide and make noises to convince him it was real. It was—" His voice broke. "It was all part of making him too scared to tell anyone what was happening." The courtroom was utterly silent now, the horror of his testimony hanging in the air. "Why are you telling us this now, Tyler?" Chen asked. Tyler looked up, his eyes suddenly clear and direct. "Because someone needs to stop her, and because Ethan deserves better than what I got." When Whitfield rose for cross-examination, his earlier smoothness had evaporated. "Mr. Mills, given your admitted participation in frightening and abusing Ethan Parker, why should this court believe your testimony now?" Aren't you simply shifting blame to minimize your own culpability? Tyler didn't flinch. I'm not minimizing anything. I did terrible things. I was horrible to that kid. I'm not asking anyone to forgive me. He paused. But everything I've said about my mother and grandmother is true. The recordings prove it. Recordings can be manipulated, contexts altered, Whitfield pressed. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating your grandmother's role to protect your mother, whom you've always been close to? A bitter laugh escaped Tyler. Close? I haven't had a real conversation with my mother since I was 10 years old. She checked out of my life long before Ethan came along. She was either working or trying to please Grandma. Yet you lived in her home, accepted her financial support. I didn't have a choice. I was a minor. And now that you're 18, you've suddenly developed this conscience, this concern for Ethan Parker? Tyler's face hardened. No, it's not sudden. I've hated myself for years, but Grandma had all the power, the money, the connections. She made it clear what would happen if I ever talked. He looked directly at Rebecca. I'm sorry, Mom, but you knew what she was doing to Ethan. You knew, and you helped her do it. Rebecca covered her face with her hands. After Tyler's testimony, the court took a brief recess. In the hallway, Nathan found himself face to face with Tyler, who had been waiting near the water fountain. I didn't do it for you, Tyler said before Nathan could speak. I did it for the kid. I know, Nathan replied. But thank you anyway. Tyler studied him for a moment. How is he? Ethan? Struggling, but he's getting help. He's safe now. Tyler nodded, something like relief crossing his features. Good. That's good. He started to walk away, then turned back. Tell him I'm sorry. Not that it matters, but I am. When court resumed, it was Rebecca's turn to testify. She took the stand, looking fragile and determined, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mrs. Parker, Whitfield began gently, can you describe your relationship with your mother, Barbara Mills? Rebecca took a shaky breath. My mother has always been controlling, perfectionistic. Nothing was ever good enough, especially not me. My father left when I was very young, and she always blamed me for driving him away. Did she physically abuse you as a child? Yes, similar to what Tyler described. The closet punishments, the physical discipline. It was just how things were in our house. And why did you allow her to have such influence over Ethan's upbringing? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I know how this sounds, but I didn't see it. Not really. The way I was raised, her methods seemed normal to me. Strict, yes, but not abusive. It wasn't until I heard the recordings that I began to understand what was happening. Do you love your stepson, Ethan? Yes, Rebecca whispered. In my way, I do. I never wanted to hurt him. I didn't know how to stand up to my mother. I never have. When Elizabeth Chen approached for cross-examination, her expression was coolly skeptical. Mrs. Parker, you're a pediatric nurse, correct? Yes. With specific training in recognizing signs of child abuse? Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. Yes. In fact, you've made mandatory reports of suspected abuse in your professional capacity. I have. So you understand what constitutes abuse, both legally and medically? In theory, yes. But when it's your own family, your own mother. Chen cut her off. Let's discuss the medications. You administered sedatives to Ethan, medications prescribed to your mother, not to a 6-year-old boy. As a nurse, you knew this was dangerous and illegal, didn't you? Rebecca's composure cracked further. Yes, I knew. And the closet punishments. You personally locked Ethan in that closet on at least 12 occasions according to our evidence. Not your mother. You. I did, Rebecca admitted, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Parker, you've characterized yourself as another victim of Barbara Mills. Yet unlike Ethan, you were an adult with professional training, financial independence, and the ability to leave at any time. Why didn't you? Rebecca stared at her hands. I was afraid of her. I've always been afraid of her. Afraid enough to sacrifice your stepson's safety and well-being? Objection, Whitfield called. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Colton ruled. Rephrase, Counselor. Chen nodded. Mrs. Parker, when you married Nathan Parker, you took on the role of stepmother to Ethan. Did you at any point consider your responsibility to protect him from harm, even if that harm came from your own mother? Rebecca's face crumpled. I should have. I know I should have. But I couldn't. I couldn't see it clearly until it was too late. No further questions, Your Honor. As Rebecca stepped down from the witness stand, her eyes briefly met Nathan's. What he saw there wasn't the calculated manipulation he'd come to expect, but something more complex, genuine remorse tangled with the damage of her own abuse-warped childhood. It didn't excuse what she'd done to Ethan, but it helped Nathan understand the toxic family system that had created this tragedy. After closing arguments, Judge Colton announced she would take the matter under advisement and issue her ruling the following morning. As the courtroom emptied, Nathan remained seated, emotionally drained by the day's testimony. Elizabeth Chen gathered her papers. You did well, Nathan. The evidence is overwhelming. And I expect the judge will grant you full custody with no visitation rights for Rebecca. And Barbara? Her criminal case is proceeding separately, but given the evidence, I'd be shocked if she doesn't serve significant time. Chen's professional demeanor softened slightly. How's Ethan doing with Dr. Freeman? It's slow. He still has nightmares. Still checks to make sure his bedroom door can't be locked from the outside. But there are good moments, too. Yesterday he laughed at a cartoon, really laughed. It was the first time I'd heard that sound since coming home. Chen nodded. Children are remarkably resilient when they have even one stable, loving adult in their lives. You're doing the right things, Nathan. As Nathan left the courthouse, he spotted Rebecca sitting alone on a bench, reporters having been kept at a distance by court security. On impulse, he approached her. She looked up, her face showing surprise and wariness. Nathan, Rebecca. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rebecca broke the silence. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to. I'm not sure I can forgive myself. I didn't come for apologies. Then why? Nathan considered the question. I need to understand. Was any of it real? The relationship, the marriage? Or was it all just part of Barbara's plan? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. It started real. When we met at that grief counseling session, I genuinely wanted to help you and Ethan. But once Mother met him, she shook her head. She saw him as another project, and I wasn't strong enough to stop her. You could have called me, warned me. By then I was trapped in her narrative, that you had abandoned your family for the military, that Ethan needed a firm hand. I'd been hearing versions of that story my entire life. She wiped her eyes. I'm not asking for sympathy, Nathan. What I did was unforgivable. But please believe that I never wanted Ethan to suffer the way I did as a child. I just couldn't see any other way. Nathan stood, having heard enough. Get help, Rebecca, real help, away from your mother's influence. Not for Ethan's sake or mine, but for yourself. As he walked away, Rebecca called after him, her voice breaking. Tell him I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter, but I am. The words echoed Tyler's earlier sentiment. Too little, too late, but perhaps the beginning of their own healing journeys. For Nathan, however, the only healing that mattered now was Ethan's. He drove directly to Mike's sister's house, needing to see his son after the emotional ordeal of the day. He found Ethan in the backyard, tentatively playing with the family's elderly golden retriever. The boy looked up as Nathan approached, his face brightening. "Dad, you're back!" It was a small thing, a child happy to see his father, but it felt like a miracle after everything they'd endured. Nathan knelt down, opening his arms, and Ethan ran into them without hesitation. "I missed you, buddy. Did you talk to the judge? Does she believe us?" "She heard everything. We'll find out her decision tomorrow." Ethan's face grew serious. "Will I have to go back? To Rebecca and Grandma Barbara?" "No," Nathan said firmly. "Never. No matter what happens in court, I promise you'll never have to go back there." Ethan studied his father's face, seeming to measure the truth of his words. Whatever he saw there must have reassured him, because he nodded solemnly. "Good. Because I don't want to be afraid anymore." "You don't have to be," Nathan promised, holding his son close. "Not ever again." Judge Colton's courtroom was nearly empty the following morning, the sensationalism of the previous day's testimony having given way to the sober reality of a family court decision. Nathan sat beside Elizabeth Chen, his posture military straight despite his exhaustion. Across the aisle, Rebecca appeared equally drained, the perfectly groomed pediatric nurse now replaced by a woman visibly bent under the weight of her actions. The bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Colton entered, her expression grave as she took her seat. She arranged the papers before her methodically before addressing the room. In the matter of Parker versus Parker regarding custody of minor child Ethan Parker, I have reviewed all testimony and evidence presented. This case, she paused, removing her glasses, is one of the most disturbing to come before this court in my 17 years on the bench. She fixed Rebecca with a steady gaze. "Mrs. Parker, the evidence clearly establishes your participation in the systematic psychological and physical abuse of your 6-year-old stepson. While I acknowledge the role your mother, Barbara Mills, played in orchestrating this abuse, and I recognize the psychological conditioning you yourself experienced, these factors explain but do not excuse your actions." Rebecca nodded almost imperceptibly, her eyes downcast. "Sergeant Parker," the judge continued, turning to Nathan, "the court recognizes your immediate and appropriate response upon discovering your son's situation. Your efforts to document the abuse, seek professional assistance, and prioritize Ethan's well-being throughout this ordeal are commendable." Judge Colton picked up her formal ruling document. "It is the finding of this court that Rebecca Mills Parker has demonstrated herself to be an unfit parent and caregiver. Full legal and physical custody of Ethan Parker is hereby awarded to his father, Nathan Parker, effective immediately. Rebecca Parker shall have no visitation rights at this time." Nathan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Chen placed a supportive hand briefly on his arm. "Mrs. Parker," the judge continued, "should you wish to petition for supervised visitation in the future, this court will require evidence of significant therapeutic intervention, including but not limited to completion of a certified parenting program, individual therapy addressing your role in the abuse, and a comprehensive psychological evaluation. Any such petition will not be considered for a minimum of 1 year from today's date." Judge Colton then addressed a matter Nathan hadn't anticipated. Regarding Tyler Mills, although he is now 18 and legally an adult, this court acknowledges his dual role as both participant in and victim of the abuse orchestrated by Barbara Mills. Mr. Mills has voluntarily enrolled in counseling and has expressed remorse for his actions. This court strongly encourages continuation of this therapeutic work. She shuffled her papers, then delivered the final portion of her ruling. Additionally, given the interrelated criminal case against Barbara Mills, this court orders that neither Ethan Parker nor Tyler Mills be compelled to testify in person at her criminal trial. Their recorded statements and depositions shall be deemed sufficient, sparing these young people the additional trauma of facing their abuser in court. With a sharp rap of her gavel, Judge Colton concluded the proceedings. This court is adjourned. As Nathan stood to leave, Rebecca approached hesitantly, her attorney hovering protectively behind her. "Nathan," she began, her voice barely audible in the nearly empty courtroom, "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But please know that I will do everything the judge ordered and more. I want to get better, to understand how I could have—" Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry." Nathan studied the woman he had once believed would help heal his broken family. "I don't hate you, Rebecca. I hate what you did. There's a difference." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Would it be possible to write to Ethan someday? Not now, but when he's older? Just to tell him I'm sorry?" "That will be Ethan's decision when he's old enough to make it, not mine, and certainly not yours." "Of course." She started to turn away, then paused. "Tyler's staying with my cousin in Seattle. He's enrolled in community college for the fall. He's trying to start over." Nathan wasn't sure why she was telling him this, but he nodded anyway. "Good. I hope he finds peace." Outside the courthouse, rain had begun to fall, a gentle spring shower that washed the world clean. Nathan stood under the overhang, watching drops create ripples and puddles on the stone steps. Elizabeth Chen joined him, closing her umbrella. "A clear victory," she said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Judge Colton's ruling was even more comprehensive than we'd hoped. The no-contact order for Barbara Mills extends even beyond her likely incarceration period. What happens now with her criminal case? The prosecutor called this morning. With the evidence from your recordings, Tyler's testimony, and what they found at her house." Chen hesitated, professional detachment momentarily failing her. "Let's just say Barbara Mills won't be seeing the outside of a prison for a very long time." Nathan nodded, relief washing through him. "Thank you, Elizabeth, for everything." "You did the hard part," she replied. "You trusted your instincts when everyone else had been fooled. That's what saved your son." As Chen departed, Nathan checked his watch. Ethan would be finishing his session with Dr. Freeman soon. The boy had been asking about the court's decision constantly, unable to fully believe he was safe until it was official. The therapy center was located in a converted Victorian house, its interior warm and intentionally non-institutional. Nathan signed in at the reception desk, then took a seat in the waiting room. On the walls hung children's artwork, bright, hopeful pictures created as part of their healing journeys. Among them, Nathan spotted one of Ethan's recent drawings, a house with sunshine pouring through the windows, no shadows or monsters in sight. Dr. Freeman emerged with Ethan, her kind face breaking into a smile when she saw Nathan. "Perfect timing. We were just finishing up." Ethan rushed to his father, no longer hesitating before physical contact. A small but significant victory. "Dad, Dr. Eleanor helped me make a feelings chart today. I can show you which colors are which feelings." "That sounds great, buddy," Nathan said, ruffling his son's hair. "Maybe after we talk with Dr. Freeman for a minute?" The therapist nodded. "Ethan, why don't you pick out a book from the shelf while your dad and I chat?" Once Ethan was happily engrossed in a picture book about dinosaurs, Dr. Freeman led Nathan to her consultation room. "He had a good session today," she began. "We worked on identifying emotions and safe ways to express them. He's making remarkable progress." "The judge awarded me full custody," Nathan told her. "No visitation rights for Rebecca and a permanent no-contact order for Barbara." Relief crossed Dr. Freeman's face. "That's excellent news. Consistency and safety are what Ethan needs most right now." She hesitated. "There is something we should discuss, though." Today, Ethan asked about his mother for the first time, his birth mother, Melissa. Nathan felt a pang of grief. Melissa's death in a car accident 2 years earlier had devastated both him and Ethan, creating the vulnerability that Barbara and Rebecca had exploited. What did he ask? He wanted to know if she would have protected him from Barbara and Rebecca, if she would have noticed what was happening. Dr. Freeman's eyes were gentle. He's trying to make sense of why some adults in his life hurt him while others protect him. It's actually a healthy sign. He's processing his experiences rather than suppressing them. What did you tell him? I told him that his mother loved him very much, and that from what I'd heard about her, she would have done everything possible to keep him safe. She paused. It might be helpful if you could share some positive memories of Melissa with him. It would strengthen his understanding that there are good, safe adults in the world, that what happened with Rebecca and Barbara wasn't normal or deserved. Nathan nodded, throat tight. I'll do that. When they left the therapy center, Nathan took Ethan to a small cafe they'd discovered recently, a place that made chocolate milkshakes that the boy had declared the best in the universe. As they settled into a corner booth, Nathan decided it was time to share the court's decision. I have some news, buddy. The judge made her decision today about where you'll be living. Ethan's spoon paused halfway to his mouth, anxiety immediately tightening his features. Did she believe us? She did. She believed everything. You're going to stay with me, and Rebecca won't be allowed to see you unless someday you decide you want that. And Grandma Barbara? She's going to be in a place where she can't hurt anyone for a very long time. Ethan absorbed this, his small face solemn. Then he asked the question Nathan had been dreading. What about Tyler? Nathan chose his words carefully. Tyler is an adult now, so the judge didn't make any decisions about him. But she did say that he was also hurt by Barbara and that he's getting help now. He was mean to me, Ethan said, stirring his milkshake pensively. But sometimes when Grandma Barbara wasn't there, he would sneak me food when I was being punished. Once he left his iPad playing cartoons outside the closet door so I wouldn't be scared of the dark. This was new information to Nathan, small acts of rebellion and kindness from a teenager caught in Barbara's web of control. People can be complicated, Nathan said gently. Tyler did some wrong things, but it sounds like he tried to help sometimes too. Dr. Eleanor says people who are hurt sometimes hurt other people because they don't know any better way to act. That's often true, but it still doesn't make it okay. Ethan nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then his face brightened. Since the judge said I can stay with you forever, does that mean we can get a dog now? The sudden shift to such a normal, childlike concern made Nathan's heart swell. We can definitely talk about that, once we find a permanent place to live. With a yard, Ethan specified. Dogs need yards to run around in. With a yard, Nathan agreed. Later that evening, as Nathan tucked Ethan into bed in their temporary apartment, the boy grew serious again. Dad, can I ask you something about Mom? My real mom? Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, recognizing the opportunity Dr. Freeman had mentioned. Of course you can. Any time. What was her favorite color? It was such an unexpectedly simple question that Nathan felt tears spring to his eyes. Purple. Deep purple. Like the flowers she used to plant in our garden every spring. Did she like dinosaurs? Nathan smiled. She loved them. When you were really little, maybe 3, she took you to the Natural History Museum to see the dinosaur bones. You were so excited you couldn't sleep the night before. Ethan's eyes widened. I remember that. There was a really big one in the middle of the room with a long neck. That's right, a Brachiosaurus. Your mom bought you a little plastic one in the gift shop. You carried it everywhere for months. What happened to it? Nathan hesitated. The toy had disappeared during the chaotic period after Melissa's death, possibly during the move to the house he'd shared with Rebecca. I'm not sure, buddy. But we could get another one if you want. Ethan nodded, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Would Mom have let Grandma Barbara put me in the closet? Nathan gathered his son close. Never. Your mom was fierce when it came to protecting you. She would have seen through Barbara immediately, like you did. That's right. Like I did, just not as quickly as I should have. Ethan seemed to consider this. It's not your fault, Dad. You came back. You saved me. Those simple words of absolution from his 6-year-old son broke something open in Nathan's chest. He held Ethan tighter, his own tears falling freely now. I'll always come back for you, buddy. Always. 3 days later, Nathan received a call from Detective Lowenstein. Barbara Mills had accepted a plea deal, sparing Tyler and Ethan the potential trauma of a trial. She would serve a minimum of 15 years for child endangerment, possession of child exploitation material, and other charges. The prosecutor said her attorney practically begged for the deal, Lowenstein explained. Once they knew Tyler was willing to testify and we had those recordings, they realized a trial would only make things worse for her. What about Rebecca? She's cooperating fully with the investigation. There may be lesser charges, but given her cooperation and the documented psychological control Barbara exerted, she'll likely receive probation and mandatory treatment rather than jail time. After ending the call, Nathan sat quietly, processing the news. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow compared to the work still ahead, helping Ethan heal from wounds that no court decision could erase. The boy was sitting at the small kitchen table, carefully coloring a picture of what appeared to be a house. That looks nice, Nathan said, joining him. Is that our new house? Ethan nodded. It has 4 bedrooms, one for you, one for me, one for guests, and one just for Legos. Nathan smiled at the specific requirements. That's a lot of Legos. I'm going to build whole cities, Ethan declared, with no monsters allowed. No monsters, Nathan agreed, watching his son continue to color, his small face intent on creating something beautiful from blank paper. It struck him as a perfect metaphor for what they were doing now, creating a new life from the blank page they'd been given. That night, for the first time since Nathan had returned home, Ethan slept through the entire night without nightmares or checking to make sure his door was still unlocked. It was a small victory, but in the war against the damage Barbara and Rebecca had inflicted, each peaceful night was territory reclaimed. As Nathan checked on his sleeping son one last time before going to bed himself, he thought about the journey that had begun with finding Ethan hiding under the bed. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be more therapy sessions, more difficult questions, more moments when the past would resurface in unexpected ways. But standing in the doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of his son's chest, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Hope. Not just hope that they would survive this ordeal, but hope that they would thrive in spite of it. That Ethan would grow up not defined by what had happened to him, but strengthened by his survival of it. That the hiding, frightened child would become a confident young man who knew, bone deep, that he was loved and worthy of protection. It was the kind of hope that only comes after facing the darkest corners of human behavior and finding, even there, the capacity for healing and redemption. Not for Barbara, whose choices had forfeited her right to such redemption. Not even necessarily for Rebecca, whose path to healing would be long and uncertain, but for Ethan, for Tyler perhaps, and for Nathan himself, who had returned from one battlefield only to find another, more insidious one, waiting at home. He had fought that battle too. And this time, he had won. 6 months later, autumn painted the trees in fiery hues of amber and crimson along the quiet suburban street where Nathan and Ethan had made their new home. A modest 2-story house with a fenced backyard, not the 4-bedroom mansion of Ethan's drawings, but a place that was entirely theirs, untainted by memories of closet punishments or midnight threats. Nathan stood on the front porch, coffee mug in hand, watching as Ethan played in the yard with Cooper, the golden retriever rescue they'd adopted from the local shelter. The dog had been abandoned, skittish around loud noises and sudden movements, a kindred spirit to Ethan in many ways. They'd healed together over the summer months, boy and dog gradually learning to trust again. "Higher, Cooper! Jump higher!" Ethan called, holding a frisbee aloft, his cheeks flushed with excitement. The dog obliged, leaping with surprising grace for his bulky frame. When he successfully caught the disc, Ethan's laughter rang out, a sound that had once been rare but now filled their home daily. Dr. Freeman had called it parallel healing, the process by which caring for a similarly traumatized being helped Ethan process his own experiences. "He's learning that past hurt doesn't determine future happiness," she'd explained during one of their weekly consultations, for both himself and Cooper. Nathan's phone vibrated in his pocket. The caller ID showed Mike Thompson's name. "Hey, Mike. What's up? Just checking in. How's the birthday planning coming along?" Nathan smiled. Ethan's 7th birthday was approaching next week, the first one they would celebrate in their new life. "Almost done. We've got the dinosaur cake ordered, the museum tickets booked, and enough goodie bags to satisfy a small army." "Sounds perfect. Listen, I got some news I thought you should hear from me first. Tyler Mills is back in town." Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. "Why?" "Community service, part of his probation agreement. He's working at the Veterans Center downtown, helping with the administrative stuff." Mike paused. He asked about Ethan. In the month since the court hearing, Tyler had maintained his distance, sending one brief email to Nathan with his contact information, in case Ethan ever wants to talk when he's older. Nathan had acknowledged it but hadn't initiated further communication. What did he want to know? Just how the kid was doing. If he was okay now. Mike's voice softened. "I think he's trying to make amends in his own way, Nate." Nathan watched Ethan rolling in the grass with Cooper, his son's face alight with simple joy. "He's doing well, really well, actually. Dr. Freeman says his progress is remarkable." "Do you want me to tell Tyler that?" Nathan considered the question. Tyler had been both perpetrator and victim in Barbara's twisted household, a complexity that defied simple categorization. "Yeah, you can tell him. But also tell him I'm not ready for any direct contact yet. Ethan's still processing everything." "Will do. Oh, and Kathy wanted me to remind you about dinner on Thursday. She's making her famous lasagna." Nathan smiled. Mike's wife had practically adopted them into her family, providing home-cooked meals and grandmotherly affection that created another layer of normalcy in Ethan's recovering world. "Wouldn't miss it. Ethan's been talking about her garlic bread all week." After ending the call, Nathan joined his son and Cooper in the yard. Ethan immediately ran to him, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Dad! Cooper did the super high jump 5 times in a row. Can we show Miss Harrison at the open house tomorrow? I don't think dogs are allowed at school events, buddy." "But maybe we can take a video to show her." Ethan considered this compromise. "Okay, but make sure you get his best jump. He can go really high when he tries." The casual conversation, so ordinary, so precious in its normalcy, reminded Nathan how far they'd come. 6 months ago, Ethan had been afraid to express preferences or make requests, constantly scanning adult faces for signs of disapproval. Now he negotiated and planned with the confident enthusiasm of any 7-year-old. That evening, as Nathan helped Ethan with his math homework, the boy working on problems 2 grade levels above his age, a letter arrived that disrupted their hard-won peace. The envelope bore the letterhead of the Vermont State Correctional Facility for Women, addressed to Nathan in unfamiliar handwriting. He set it aside until after Ethan was asleep, then opened it with a sense of dread. Dear Sergeant Parker, you don't know me, but I was Barbara Mills's cellmate for the first 3 months of her incarceration. I'm writing because I believe you should be aware of something concerning your son's safety. Barbara talks in her sleep. Most nights it's nonsense, but sometimes she speaks about the boy and unfinished business. Last week, she received a visit from a former colleague, a man named Howard Grayson. Their conversation seemed innocent enough, but afterward she was different, more focused. She started writing letters, dozens of them. When I asked who she was writing to, she said, "Old friends who owe me favors." I caught a glimpse of one envelope addressed to someone at Oak Ridge Elementary School, where I believe your son attends. I'm telling you this because I have a grandson Ethan's age. If someone was potentially targeting him, I'd want to know. Prison officials have been notified about the letters, but you know how slowly these systems work. Stay vigilant, Margaret Wilson. Nathan read the letter twice, his heart pounding. Barbara's network of friends, the connections she'd boasted about during her arrest, hadn't vanished with her imprisonment. For months, he'd allowed himself to believe the threat was contained, but this letter suggested otherwise. He immediately called Detective Lowenstein, reading her the letter verbatim. "I'll look into this Howard Grayson," she promised, "and I'll contact the prison to verify this Margaret Wilson's account. In the meantime, maybe keep Ethan home from school tomorrow until we can assess whether there's a legitimate threat." The school was supposed to have been notified about Barbara's no-contact order. They were, Lowenstein confirmed. "But if she has associates there we don't know about?" The implication hung in the air. Barbara's influence had proven disturbingly far-reaching before. There was no reason to believe her imprisonment had completely neutralized it. Nathan barely slept that night, checking Ethan's room repeatedly and testing the new security system he'd installed when they moved in. By morning, he'd made a decision. He would take Ethan to school himself and speak directly with the principal about the potential security concern. "Why are you taking me to school?" Ethan asked as they drove, clearly detecting his father's tension. "Is something wrong?" "Just want to talk to your principal about the upcoming science fair," Nathan improvised. "Make sure everything's set for your volcano project." Ethan studied him with unexpected perception. "You're worried about something. Your forehead gets crinkly when you're worried." Nathan managed to smile. "Just some grown-up stuff, buddy. Nothing for you to worry about." At Oak Ridge Elementary, Nathan walked Ethan directly to his classroom, carefully observing the other adults in the hallway. Ms. Harrison greeted them warmly, but he noticed her eyes widen slightly at his serious expression. "Ethan, why don't you get started on your morning worksheet?" she suggested. "Your dad and I need to chat for a minute." Once Ethan was settled at his desk, she led Nathan just outside the classroom door. "Is everything okay? Ethan's been doing so well lately." Nathan lowered his voice. "I received some concerning information about Barbara Mills potentially trying to make contact through someone at this school. I'm meeting with Principal Davis after drop-off, but I wanted you to be aware." Ms. Harrison's face paled. "That's disturbing. Do you know who it might be?" "No. But Barbara apparently has been writing letters to old friends, including someone here." He hesitated. "You've been at Oak Ridge longer than most. Did Barbara have particular allies on staff?" The teacher thought for a moment. "She was on the board for years, so she knew everyone. But she was especially close with Judith Manning, our administrative secretary. They played bridge together, I think." Nathan made a mental note of the name. "I'll mention that to Principal Davis. In the meantime, could you keep a closer eye on Ethan today? Make sure no one unexpected tries to speak with him?" "Of course. He won't leave my sight." Principal Davis received Nathan in his office immediately, his concern evident as Nathan explained the situation. "This is deeply troubling, Sergeant Parker. Rest assured, we've been rigorously enforcing the no-contact order regarding your son. All staff were briefed about the situation." "Including Judith Manning?" A shadow crossed the principal's face. "Ah, yes, Miss." Manning was informed, though I recall she was quite shocked about the allegations against Barbara. They were friends for many years. "Is she here today?" "No, actually. She called in sick yesterday and today." First time in years, she's known for her perfect attendance. Nathan's instincts, honed through years of military service, hummed with warning. "Could you try calling her? Just to check in?" Principal Davis hesitated, then nodded, picking up his phone. After several rings, he left a voicemail. "Judith, it's Robert Davis. Just checking how you're feeling. Give me a call when you get this." He hung up, looking troubled. No answer. That's unusual for Judith. "Do you have her home address?" "Sergeant Parker, I understand your concern, but I can't simply give out an employee's personal information." Nathan leaned forward. "My son was systematically abused by Barbara Mills for months. If there's even a possibility that one of her associates is planning something that could harm him again, I need to know." The principal studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "I'll call the police myself and request a welfare check at her address. If there's cause for concern, they can inform us both." It was a reasonable compromise. Nathan nodded, providing Detective Lowenstein's contact information to expedite the process. As Nathan left the principal's office, his phone rang. Mike Thompson. "Nate, I just heard from Lowenstein. Howard Grayson is Barbara's former lawyer. He retired 3 years ago, but apparently still visits her regularly. Prison officials confirm he brought her writing materials during his last visit." "And Margaret Wilson?" "Legitimate. She's serving 5 years for embezzlement, was indeed Barbara's cellmate until recently. Prison authorities have confiscated several of Barbara's outgoing letters, but they admit some might have gotten through before they were alerted." Nathan's concern deepened. "The school secretary, Judith Manning, hasn't shown up for work. She was close with Barbara." "Give me the address." "I'll head over there now." By mid-afternoon, the pieces began falling into place with disturbing clarity. Judith Manning's house had been found empty, closets cleared out, mail piled up. Records showed she had withdrawn a significant amount of cash from her bank account 3 days earlier. Most concerning, a search of her home office revealed a recent letter from Barbara Mills containing what appeared to be coded instructions and a key to a storage unit. Detective Lowenstein called Nathan as he was picking Ethan up from school. "We found documents in Manning's storage unit, detailed information about your new address, Ethan's school schedule, even the name of his therapist. She's been conducting surveillance on both of you for weeks." Nathan's blood ran cold. "Has she been located?" "Not yet. We've issued an alert and frozen her accounts, but Nathan, there's more." Among the papers was a draft custody petition naming Barbara's cousin in Vermont as Ethan's more suitable guardian due to your alleged PTSD episodes. It's filled with fabricated incidents and so-called witness statements. That would never hold up in court. Probably not. But it suggests they're trying to build a case to challenge your custody. The concerning part is how much legitimate information they've gathered about your current life. Someone has been watching you very closely." Nathan glanced at Ethan, who was buckling himself into the back seat, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around them. "What's the recommendation?" "We're placing a patrol car near your house tonight. I'd suggest staying vigilant, but trying not to alarm Ethan." This appears to be a long-game strategy on Barbara's part, not an immediate threat of abduction. That night, after securing the house and checking the locks 3 times, Nathan sat on the edge of Ethan's bed during their nightly reading ritual. The boy had selected a book about a child detective solving neighborhood mysteries, his latest interest, fueled by his growing confidence. "Dad?" Ethan asked as Nathan closed the book. "Are the bad people trying to come back?" The question froze Nathan in place. "What makes you ask that, buddy?" Ethan's eyes, so much older than his years, met his father's. "You checked the locks a lot tonight?" and there's a police car outside. And you were talking to Ms. Harrison and Principal Davis for a long time this morning." Nathan considered lying, offering some benign explanation. But one of the foundations of their healing had been honesty, age-appropriate, but never false. "There might be people who still listen to Grandma Barbara," he said carefully, "people who might try to cause problems for us. But the police know about it, and they're helping keep us safe." Ethan absorbed this, his small face solemn. "Is it Judith from the office? She was always asking me questions about you. If you got mad or yelled or forgot to pick me up." Nathan's heart sank. Even as they'd believed Ethan was finally safe, Barbara's network had been gathering ammunition, using his innocent conversations against them. "Yes, it might be Judith, but you didn't do anything wrong by talking to her. You couldn't have known." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "I told her you never yell, that you always come when you promise." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Was that okay?" "That was perfect, buddy. And it's true. I'll always come for you, no matter what." As Ethan drifted to sleep, Nathan remained beside him, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Outside, the patrol car's occasional light swept across the bedroom ceiling. They were safe for tonight, but Barbara's reach from prison had proven longer than anyone anticipated. The next morning, Nathan received a call from his commanding officer, Major Wilson. "Parker, I need to give you a heads up. Someone's been making inquiries about your service record, specifically about any incidents during your last deployment that might indicate mental instability." "Let me guess. Howard Grayson?" "Good guess. Former attorney, claimed to be writing a book about veterans' reintegration challenges. Asked a lot of pointed questions about PTSD evaluations and whether we'd observed any concerning behavior since your return." "What did you tell him?" "That your record is exemplary, your psych evaluations all clear, and that the only concerning behavior I've observed is his inappropriate investigation of a decorated soldier." Wilson paused. "This has something to do with your custody case, doesn't it? Barbara Mills is orchestrating a campaign from prison, trying to build a case that I'm unstable and unfit to parent Ethan." Wilson's voice hardened. "Not on my watch. I've already filed a complaint about Grayson's unethical information gathering, and Parker, the unit has your back on this, whatever you need." The support was unexpected but deeply welcome. For months, Nathan had fought this battle largely alone, with only Mike and a few others in his corner. The knowledge that his military family stood ready to defend him as well strengthened his resolve. 2 days later, Detective Lowenstein arrived at their home with news. "We've located Judith Manning. She was apprehended at a bus station in Burlington, Vermont, presumably on her way to meet Barbara's cousin. She had documentation on her, medical reports, school records, even photographs of Ethan taken without your knowledge." "Is she in custody?" "Yes, on charges of conspiracy and violating a protective order. She's talking, hoping for leniency. According to her, Barbara has been planning this since her sentencing, building a case for you as an unstable PTSD-afflicted veteran incapable of properly caring for Ethan. The goal was to have her cousin gain temporary custody, then gradually disappear with Ethan to Canada." Nathan felt physically ill at how methodically Barbara had plotted, even from behind bars. "What happens now?" "Barbara will face additional charges for orchestrating this from prison. Her communications will be severely restricted. Grayson's law license is under review for ethics violations. And most importantly," Lowenstein's expression softened, "we've identified and are investigating all the old friends mentioned in Barbara's letters. The network is being dismantled, systematically and completely." That evening, as Nathan and Ethan ate dinner with Cooper patiently waiting for dropped scraps beneath the table, Nathan realized the weight that had settled on his shoulders upon receiving Margaret Wilson's letter had finally begun to lift. Barbara's reach might be long, but it wasn't limitless. Her resources were being cut off, her allies exposed. "Dad?" Ethan's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can Tyler come to my birthday party?" The question blindsided Nathan. Tyler? Why would you want him there? Ethan pushed his peas around his plate. "Miss Harrison said sometimes people do bad things because they don't know how to do good things. But they can learn, like how Cooper used to bite when we first got him because he was scared. But now, he doesn't anymore because he knows he's safe." Nathan set down his fork, studying his son's earnest face. "Tyler did hurt you, buddy. That's not something we should forget." "I know, but he also helped sometimes. And Mike said he's working with veterans now, trying to do better things." Ethan's voice grew quieter. "I'm not scared of him anymore. I want him to see that." The simple courage of his son's words humbled Nathan. After everything Ethan had endured, his capacity for compassion remained intact, wounded perhaps, but not destroyed. "I'll think about it," Nathan promised. "That's a big decision." Ethan nodded, accepting this answer, and returned to his dinner. The conversation moved on to birthday cake preferences and whether Cooper should wear a party hat. Ethan was strongly in favor. Nathan had doubts about the dog's patience. But later that night, after Ethan was asleep, Nathan found himself considering his son's request. The easy answer would be no. To protect Ethan from any reminder of that traumatic period, to keep the boundaries clear between their new life and the painful past. Yet there was wisdom in Ethan's approach too. Barbara had tried to teach him fear, suspicion, and silence. In reaching toward reconciliation, however limited and cautious, Ethan was rejecting those lessons in favor of healing and growth. With a deep breath, Nathan picked up his phone and composed a message to the email address Tyler had provided months earlier. "Ethan has asked if you might attend his birthday party next Saturday at the Natural History Museum. 2 p.m. No pressure either way. Just passing along his request." The response came less than an hour later. "I don't deserve his forgiveness, but if he really wants me there, I'll come. Thank you for letting me know. Tyler." Nathan set the phone down, uncertain if he'd made the right decision, but trusting in the remarkable resilience of his son's heart. Whatever came next, Barbara's continued machinations, the long process of healing, the complex navigation of forgiveness and boundaries, they would face it together. Outside, the patrol car remained, its presence a reminder that threats still existed. But inside their home, a different kind of strength was growing, one built not on fear and control, as Barbara had believed, but on trust, honesty, and the courage to begin again. As Nathan checked on Ethan one last time before going to bed himself, he found the boy sleeping peacefully, one arm thrown around Cooper, who had somehow managed to sneak onto the bed despite the "no dogs on furniture" rule. The sight, so ordinary, so precious, reminded Nathan of how far they had come from that first terrifying night when he'd found Ethan hiding under the bed. They were not unscathed, but they were healing. And in that moment, it was enough. As we reach the end of Nathan and Ethan's journey, I'm reminded of what truly matters in life. Like many of you who've weathered your own storms, raising children through difficult times, standing strong when the world seemed to crumble, rebuilding after loss, this story reflects the resilience of the human spirit. Remember when our generation was taught that showing vulnerability was weakness? Nathan's story teaches us otherwise. His willingness to fight for his son, to create safety where there was fear, mirrors the quiet heroism many of you have shown in your own families. The world often overlooks the battles fought behind closed doors, the silent sacrifices made for those we love. Yet these moments define us more than any career achievement or material success. As you reflect on Nathan and Ethan finding peace with Cooper sleeping on the forbidden furniture, perhaps you're reminded of your own moments of hard-won joy, when the rules became less important than the healing. What unexpected moments of grace have appeared in your own difficult chapters? Has there been someone in your life, like Ethan, whose resilience taught you about forgiveness? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below.